I didn't expect to be shamed at a family celebration, but when my niece laughed and called me the poor uncle in front of everyone, my chest went tight like someone had punched the air out of me. We were in my sister's backyard, strings of yellow lights hanging above us. I could smell grilled food and hear glasses clinking. Laughter bounced around, loud and careless. I stood near the plastic table, holding a paper plate, suddenly very aware of my faded shirt and worn shoes. My ears rang, my hands felt cold, and my face burned. My niece had just been accepted into a top college. Everyone was praising her, how smart she was, how far she'd go. Then she looked at me, smirked, and said loudly, "At least I won't end up like him, still struggling, still poor." She laughed. A few others chuckled, unsure if they should. That only made it worse. I tried to smile it off, but she kept going. "I mean, no offense, Uncle, but you've never really done anything big, right?" Her words landed hard, one after another, like she wanted to make sure everyone heard. I felt small, invisible, reduced to a joke. People shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away, others stared at their phones. No one said anything. The silence pressed down on me heavier than her words ever could. For a moment, everything paused. Even the music from the speaker seemed too loud. I swallowed, nodded once, and quietly set my plate down. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself. I just walked out, the sound of laughter following me to my car. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying her voice in my head, wondering when my life had become something people could mock so easily. The next morning, my phone rang. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to pick up. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and completely unexpected. "Hello, this is the Dean of Admissions from your niece's college. I was hoping to speak with you." My heart skipped, my hand tightened around the phone. And that's when I realized the story my niece told about me wasn't the only one people knew. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Social Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now back to the story. I stood there holding the phone, staring at the wall like it might explain what was happening. The dean? From her college? My niece had never once mentioned my name in connection with her application, at least not in any kind way. "Yes," I said carefully, "this is him." There was a brief pause, papers shifting on the other end. "Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to speak with you regarding a recommendation letter that was submitted under your name." My stomach dropped. A recommendation letter? I hadn't written one. No one asked me to. "I think there's been a mistake," I said slowly. "I didn't send any letter." The dean sighed, not annoyed, but thoughtful. "That's what I wanted to clarify. The letter described you as a distant relative who never achieved much and was used as a contrast to highlight your niece's ambition. It raised concerns." I closed my eyes. Her words from the party echoed in my head. Still poor, never done anything big. The dean continued. "Our review committee takes character very seriously. When a student uses another person, especially family, to belittle someone, it tells us a lot." I leaned against the kitchen counter. My legs felt weak. "She also mentioned," he added, "that you worked in community development. That caught my attention." I opened my eyes. "I do," I said. "I've spent 20 years running adult literacy programs and helping first-generation students apply for scholarships. Quiet work, not flashy." There was silence on the line, not awkward, listening. "That's exactly why I called," the dean said finally. "We did some checking. Your name appears on several nonprofit boards. You've helped hundreds of students get into college." My throat tightened. No one at that party knew that. I never talked about it. I didn't think it mattered. "It does matter," he said, almost like he could hear my thoughts. "And we were troubled by how you were portrayed." I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry either. Mostly, I felt tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of letting other people define my worth. "I'm not calling to cause trouble," the dean said gently, "but we may need to revisit her application." When the call ended, I sat down slowly, my heart pounding. For the first time since the backyard humiliation, something shifted. My niece had tried to use me as an example of failure, but she had no idea what her words had just uncovered and what was about to come next. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went to work like nothing had happened, unlocked the small community center, and greeted the morning students. Older women practicing English, a young man studying for his GED, a quiet girl filling out scholarship forms with shaking hands. This was my world. No applause, no titles, just progress, one step at a time. By afternoon, my sister called. Her voice was sharp the moment I answered. "Did you talk to someone from the college?" I didn't deny it. They called me. There was a long breath on the other end. "Why would you say anything? You know how hard she worked for this." I closed my office door. "I didn't say anything bad," I replied. "I just told the truth when they asked." My sister lowered her voice, but the anger was still there. "She was just joking at the party. You didn't have to take it so seriously." Joking. I thought about the laughter, the looks, the way I had walked out alone. Before I could respond, another call came through. Unknown number again. This time it wasn't the dean. It was my niece. She didn't sound confident now. "Uncle, did you really tell them about your work?" I chose my words carefully. I answered their questions. Her breath caught. "They emailed me. They want a meeting. They said my recommendation letter raised red flags." For the first time, I heard fear in her voice. "I didn't mean it like that," she said quickly. "I was just trying to stand out. Everyone exaggerates." I looked around my small office, the peeling paint, the donated desks, the students who believed in me more than my own family ever had. "Standing out doesn't require stepping on someone else," I said quietly. She didn't answer right away. "I didn't know you did all that," she finally admitted. "You never talk about it." "I never thought I needed to," I said. The call ended awkwardly. No apology, no goodbye. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar email address. Subject: Request for in-person discussion, admissions review. My hands trembled slightly as I read it. The college wasn't done asking questions, and this time they wanted me there too. If you believe respect matters more than money, and quiet dignity always wins in the end, subscribe for more true stories about family, betrayal, and unexpected justice. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept thinking about the meeting, what they would ask, what I should say, and whether showing up would only make things worse. I had never been inside a college admissions office before. Not like this. I helped students apply, yes, but I was always behind the scenes. The next afternoon, I walked into the college building with plain walls and quiet hallways. My shoes echoed on the floor. I felt out of place, like I didn't belong there. When I reached the conference room, the dean stood up and shook my hand warmly. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Please, sit." A few minutes later, my niece entered with my sister. My niece wouldn't look at me. My sister gave me a tight nod, her lips pressed together. The dean got straight to the point. He placed a copy of the recommendation letter on the table. "This letter compares 2 lives," he said calmly. "One is described as successful. The other is described as a warning." He looked at my niece. "Do you recognize how harmful that is?" My niece swallowed. "I didn't think it mattered. I thought they only cared about achievements." "We care about character and honesty." Then he turned to me. "Would you mind explaining what you do in your own words?" I hesitated, then spoke simply. I talked about the community center, the night classes. the students who cried when they passed exams, the ones who were the first in their families to read a full book in English. No big words, no bragging. When I finished, the room was quiet. My sister looked at me differently now, confused, almost embarrassed. The dean folded his hands. "This work," he said, "is the kind of impact many students write about but never actually do." My niece's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know. I thought success looked different." The dean nodded. "That misunderstanding is exactly why we're having this conversation." He closed the folder. "We will take some time to review everything." As we stood to leave, my niece finally looked at me. Her voice was low. "I'm sorry," she said. It wasn't loud, it wasn't public, but for the first time, it was real. And I knew, no matter what the college decided, something had already changed. A week passed, then two. No calls, no emails. Life slipped back into its usual rhythm, unlocking the center, pouring cheap coffee, listening to stories that mattered more than resumes. I told myself the meeting was over, that whatever decision they made had nothing to do with me anymore. Then the letter arrived. It wasn't thick or dramatic, just a clean white envelope with the college logo in the corner. My hands hesitated before opening it, like some part of me already knew this wasn't just about my niece. Inside was a formal notice. Her admission had been put on hold pending further review. The reason was stated clearly: concerns regarding integrity and misrepresentation in submitted materials. That evening, my sister came to my house for the first time in years. She didn't bring food. She didn't sit down right away. She stood near the door, looking smaller than I remembered. "She's devastated," my sister said. "She thinks you ruined her future." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't write the letter. Silence stretched between us. "I raised her to be confident," my sister continued. "Maybe too confident." I thought about the backyard again. The lights, the laughter, the way everyone stayed quiet while I was torn down. "Confidence doesn't need cruelty," I said. My sister's eyes filled. She sat down slowly. "She never learned where you came from, or what you gave up." I nodded, because no one ever asked. The next morning, my niece showed up at the community center. She stood at the doorway, watching the class in session. No makeup, no phone in her hand, just nervous energy. "I asked to volunteer," she said softly. "If they let me keep my application, I want to earn it." I studied her face. For the first time, she wasn't trying to impress anyone. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Then start by listening." As she took her first seat among the students she once would have ignored, I felt something settle inside me. She had used my life as a warning. Now it was becoming her lesson. The first few days were hard for her. She struggled to make eye contact with the students. When one older man asked for help sounding out basic words, she froze, unsure what to do. This wasn't a debate club or a polished campus tour. This was real life. Slow, messy, and humbling. I didn't step in right away. I watched as she learned to sit still, to listen, to wait while someone searched for the right word. I saw her frustration soften into patience. One afternoon, she stayed late to help a single mother fill out a job application. When the woman thanked her, my niece smiled, but it wasn't the proud smile she used to wear. It was quiet. At home, my sister called less. When she did, her tone had changed. Less defensive, more tired. "She doesn't talk much now," she said once. "She thinks a lot." Weeks later, the email finally came. The college had made a decision. They would reinstate her application under one condition. She must submit a new personal statement, this time focused on accountability, growth, and verified service hours. No comparisons, no exaggerations. My niece read the email twice, then looked at me. "I don't know how to write that." I met her eyes. "Then write the truth." She spent nights at the center, typing and deleting, asking questions she'd never asked before. About money, about choices, about why I never defended myself at the party. "Because I didn't need to," I told her. "My life already had meaning." The day she submitted the new statement, she hugged me without warning. It was awkward and sudden, but real. A month later, her acceptance letter arrived. No party this time, no loud praise. Just the two of us sitting at the kitchen table, the envelope between us. She looked up and said, "They accepted me for who I am now, not who I pretended to be." I nodded. The girl who once called me poor had finally learned something far richer, and I didn't need a title, money, or revenge to teach her that. I already had a life worth standing by. The night before she left for college, my niece came by again. No announcement, no family crowd, just a soft knock on my door after sunset. She carried a small notebook in her hands. The cover was bent, pages marked with sticky notes. "I wanted you to read this," she said. It was her final personal statement, the one that got her accepted. She sat quietly while I read. There was no blaming, no pretending. She wrote about the backyard party, the laughter, and the silence. About how easy it was to confuse success with status and how hard it was to face herself afterward. When I finished, I handed it back. "This took courage." She nodded. "The kind I didn't have before." We sat on the porch, listening to traffic in the distance. The air was cooler now. Fall was coming. Change always did. "I used to think being poor was something to escape," she said. "Now I know being empty is worse." I smiled at that, not because it was poetic, but because it was true. The next morning, I drove her to campus. As we unloaded her bags, she hesitated, then turned to me. "If anyone asks who inspired me," she said, "I won't make you invisible again." I squeezed her shoulder. "Just live right. That's enough." As I watched her walk toward the dorms, I didn't feel pride the way people talk about it. I felt peace. Because humiliation fades, money changes, titles come and go, but dignity, earned quietly, has a way of calling back. Sometimes from a college office, sometimes from a humbled heart. College changed her, but not in the way brochures promise. She called me during her first semester, usually late at night, not to complain about classes or roommates, but to ask questions, real ones. Why do some students feel ashamed asking for help? How did you stay kind when people looked down on you? What kept you going when no one noticed? I answered honestly, because someone always needs what you can give, even if they never thank you. She joined a volunteer group on campus, then left it when she realized it was more about photos than people. She found her way instead to a tutoring program for local kids. No spotlight, no speeches. During winter break, she came back to the community center on her own. She didn't wait for me to invite her. The students noticed the change before I did. "You raised her well," one woman whispered to me. I shook my head. She raised herself, finally. At the next family gathering, things were different, quieter, more careful. When someone joked about money, my niece spoke up. "That's not funny," she said. "Not everyone starts in the same place." The room fell silent. Not awkward this time, but respectful. Later, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a card with a simple line written in careful ink. "Thank you for letting me learn the hard way." I folded it and put it in my pocket. I thought back to that backyard. The lights, the laughter, the humiliation. I realized something then. She had tried to shrink me in front of others. Instead, life had expanded her. And sometimes the most powerful response to being mocked for being poor is living rich in ways no insult can touch. A year later, my niece stood on a small stage at her college. No big crowd, no fancy lights. Just a microphone, a few chairs, and a room full of students who looked nervous and hopeful. She was introducing a new outreach program, free tutoring and application help for first-generation students, the same kind of students who once sat quietly in my community center, afraid to ask questions. When she finished speaking, she looked out into the room and said one last thing. "There's someone I need to thank," she said. "I once mocked him for having nothing, but he was the richest person I knew, and I didn't realize it until I almost lost everything." I watched from the back, unseen, just the way I liked it. After the event, she found me and smiled. Not the old, proud smile. This one was steady. "You didn't save me," she said. "You showed me who I didn't want to be." I nodded. That was enough. People often think justice looks loud. Arguments, revenge, public shame. But sometimes it looks like time, truth, and a phone call that changes everything. I was humiliated for being poor, but I never was. If this story moved you, reminded you of someone, or made you see success differently, subscribe for more real-life stories about dignity, family, and quiet strength. Because the stories that matter most are often the ones no one brags about.